Well, okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Enabling RFID for All Retail. We're going to be talking about some affordable solutions for mid-sized brand owners and retailers, and we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Before we start, just covering a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, and so we'll send out the meeting recording along with a link to the presentation for you. And at the end, we're going to have a dedicated Q&A session. So feel free to drop your answers or questions in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. So overall today, we're going to explore how RFID technology is transforming retail operations, making inventory management more efficient, accurate, and scalable, even for the next tier brands. And you're going to get to hear from City Furniture personally on how Rain RFID has revolutionized their manual inventory management. Zebra Technologies is going to share their best practices for RFID. And RFID for You will share how their Tagmatics retail solution just lays the foundation to automate RFID. And we have a great lineup of experts. So let me do a brief introduction of them. Archit Dua is the VP of Strategic Accounts at RFID for You. And he brings over a decade of experience in RFID solutions across retail, healthcare, and many more. He's got a graduate degree in Baskin Engineering at UCSC, of computer science, sorry. And he's held key roles in strategic development, project management, software engineering, and also holds some patents in the technology. Chad Simpson is the CIO of City Furniture. And he's been the driving force behind the company's digital transformation and that technology strategy for the last 13 years. He started his career at City Furniture right after earning a Bachelor of Science in Decision Information Sciences from the University of Florida. Then he gained valuable experience as a director of IT at Sandoa and MKRS Law before returning to City Furniture in 2015 to lead the developments of its IT infrastructure. And finally, Pete Hinrich is the Senior Account Executive at Zebra Technologies. And he brings over 2 decades of experience in enterprise technology, helping businesses optimize asset tracking, visibility, and operational efficiency. Prior to Zebra, he held leadership roles at Oracle, AT&T, and other major tech firms, specializing in cloud solutions, managed services, and digital transformation. With a graduate degree from Northern Michigan University in computer and information science. So I'm going to pass it to Archit to discuss RFID retail today.
Thanks, Kelly. And thank you everyone for joining today's session. If you're not aware, one of the things we wanted to get started with just before we even delved into a little bit more about City Furniture's RFID journey and how many retailers are using RFID is also just to basically put a little exclamation mark in terms of how widespread RFID is across the retail industry. It's not something that's new. It's not something that is, an untested technology. It's something that's a real life breathing technology that many retailers are using today for a wide variety of use cases, all the way from shipping, receiving, cycle counting, automating customer experiences so that way you can have things like self-checkout and smart fitting rooms. So it's a live technology. It's continuing to expand. And what we're seeing is it's a go-to technology for many organizations, including our guest speaker over here, City Furniture, and how they can transform their operations with the technology. So I wanted to start off by just throwing out some great names, some great folks that are using the technology today. But we're at a very important point where, a lot of folks are starting to do it, and we see a big hockey curve effect coming in the next few years where many retailers, including on the mid to small size, can start leveraging this technology to operate their operations as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chad to speak a little bit more about their operations with RFID, how they got started, and what they're leveraging the technology for.
Sure. Thank you, Archit and Kelly. Appreciate the introduction. So we actually started our journey 7 or 8 years ago, pre-COVID, but we had been looking at the technology for probably 10 plus years. We go to NRF every year up in New York, and it's something we've been following very closely. Just understanding the importance of having accurate inventory. And it's more, as Archit said, it's more important now more than ever. A little bit about who we are. We're a South Florida-based home furnishings company, currently only in the state of Florida. However, we do sell out of Florida and to the Caribbean. We are one of the top 20 furniture retailers in the U.S. Our goal is to be number one in the next five years. We operate, this says 24 showrooms from Miami to Vero Beach, but we have 38 showrooms in total. We have the Ashley license for South Florida, and we're adding about 1 to 2 stores on average every year. And our newer stores are about the size of an IKEA. They're 160 to 200,000 square feet. Our previous stores were in the 60 to 80,000 foot range. So we're going much bigger, less stores, but bigger, and making them a destination. Why? Because we can create an experience that you can't get online. And we think that's one of our differentiating factors. And while doing that, we're expanding our lineup. We have a home accent section within our stores, similar to a Home Goods. And that becomes even more critical to have accurate inventory, particularly for those grab and go items that customers are going to be taking home with them. So we have the last bullet point in here is we have about 10 to 15,000 SKUs in every store. And it's a very wide range of product, from a 10-piece sectional to a mattress, to a candlestick, to a portrait on the wall, all the way to a liquid stain kit that you might buy to protect your sofa. So a very wide range of materials as well, metallic to porcelain to liquids. And you'll see some slide on the next slide, some of the challenges we had to overcome. So this was pre-RFID pain points, and this slide doesn't do it justice at all. But so I'll hit on this a little bit. But 8 regular counts, 15 man hours per showroom each count. 4 all counts, 40 man hours per showroom each. The reality is it was much worse than that. Some years we didn't even get 4 all counts. Every time we went to do an all count, everybody dusted off the hardware. Maybe it hadn't been used in months. A lot of the times it was lost, broken, didn't work, batteries were dead, couldn't connect, Wi-Fi issues, any and every problem you can imagine when you only do something 4 times a year, or 8 times a year. It just doesn't work the way that you planned it to work, to the point where it was something everybody dreaded. And I'm sure some of you have that experience today for your inventory. And particularly our larger stores, you can imagine counting 15 to 20,000 SKUs. And each one was a manual barcode scan. And there was nothing to prevent something from being scanned twice, because there was no unique LP during that scanning process. It was just the generic scan. So it was technically, from an associate and ASAP perspective, the associates weren't happy. The business wasn't happy. Tech wasn't happy. It was just an all-around bad deal, bad process. So we knew there was a better way. We had been to the NRF, we'd been to RFID trade shows, we networked with other people. We knew that there was a better way, but we just had to figure out how to get there. And then that's when we met RFID for You, and really went into the transition of implementing RFID to solve the inaccuracy problems and everything I just mentioned. So how did we do it? We partnered with RFID for You. We actually implemented a different system prior to going with them. And I won't go into too much detail there, but that did not work. But if you fail, try again, which we did. And we ended up meeting Archit and RFID for You. And we implemented their Tagmatics software. And then a key element of this is that we standardized the tag. So we went with a flag tag there on the right. And that tag works on metal, and it also works on non-metal. And that was a strategic decision, so that we just had one tag to deal with. We didn't want to worry about changing over tags. There's all kinds of, it just makes the environment more complex. So we wanted to stick with one tag, standardize one tag, train on one tag, get really good at using that tag. We went with Zebra RFID printers, bottom left there. And then we initially did not go with RFID Zebra scanners. And I would say in the evolution of our RFID implementation, we just rolled out the new Zebra scanners over the last year, and it was the single best thing that our showrooms were excited about, that they got the new scanners because the batteries lasted longer, the read range was better, and that was the single biggest pain point of RFID was the scanning process and the read range. So now they're extremely happy. They were fighting over who got the scanners first, and now they all have them. You know, it's definitely having the right gear, having the right hardware, the right software, the right partner. You know, it just it makes it all works together to provide the right solution.
Great,
So
Chad. That was really good input.
yeah, and you know, some like this slide's meant to be some what are some of the lessons learned? You know, versatile RFID label selection, single RFID tag. You know, there's a million tags out there, and I would say you got to pick the right one for your environment. If you're dealing with just boxes, you probably want to go with a bigger tag, get the best read range you can get. But you know, we had a very unique environment in our showrooms because everything is out of the box, and and there's a lot of metal. Very, very, very comprehensive standards of where the labels are placed. It took us months, maybe even longer to get this right. We have a visual display team, and we have the sales team. The visual display team is responsible for how the showroom looks, and the sales team is responsible for helping maintain that and obviously selling the product. So we have a binder, and it's actually training class, training material on how and where to tag the product, depending on what class of product it is. As well as a very comprehensive cycle counting SOP standard as well. We have 2 people cycle count the store we used to be every week for about 3 years, and we just went to every 2 weeks. But we have 2 people cycle count the stores that each starts at one end, and they essentially cover the whole store, and they crisscross and pass each other. And then we have some logic in the software that removes all the duplicates and ensures that we have a comprehensive count. We have a reconciliation process that happens that day, almost real time. And then there's standards that people have to follow to make sure that, you know, if there's discrepancies, that things not get released when they should have. Did something get received and maybe it didn't get posted? So there's a lot of things that one of the biggest benefits that came out of this, other than having accurate inventory, was it really pressurizes your system to make sure that everybody's following the right process upstream. Because if something's not happening and you're counting your inventory every week or every 2 weeks, you're going to flush out a lot of problems that you probably were never seeing before. So I would call that an indirect benefit that really helps you understand if you're running your business well and if people are following their standards. We recorded videos. That was another big one. Training videos. We lots of visuals. So we have these rolling carts that we used. They had the label printers on them. We used the Yeti battery packs so that it can be rolled anywhere. Lots of pictures of how it should look. Again, a lot of visual controls built into our culture. Having the right partner. We didn't have the right partner when we started, and we've been with RFID now for probably 5 or 6 years, and they've been phenomenal to work with, as well as Zebra. Got to have dedicated resources, especially when you're rolling this out. It's not this is a business process change. This is not a technology change. This is changing the way your business operates. So you really need buy-in from everybody that's involved, not just sales, not just tech. Ensure investment is made to label all items. Yep, you got to have a commitment. You got to have a commitment to get this done. We had a SWAT team of people where we attacked store by store, relabeled everything, and made a very conscious effort to get this done in a certain amount of time. And some of the results on the next slide.
And one more thing that I'd like to add in, chat, before we jump to the results is, one of the things that we saw that stood out, as with City, which I think is extremely important, is the need to be kind of data driven. That's something that we saw that City did a great job of. It was always a continuous improvement by taking, the data that you collect with RFID. So that's something that I would say is like extremely important, obviously, in any project, but that really, led to a very successful project because it was, analyzing the data, week after week to see where those discrepancies are, where those gaps were, to continue to improve. And that not only what RFID provides, but as Chad rightly said, right, the just the general business processes that happen for any retailer. So I know it's a very important thing, where you can use that data that RFID provides to find some of those holes.
Absolutely. The next slide here shows the results. Pretty stunning. Again, if you only count your inventory once or twice a year, there's so many processes that have to be right to have a successful result at the end of those 6 months or the end of the year. So by doing it every week, there's so many things that you find and problems and gaps and, that we uncovered. So you can see the results here when we rolled it out 2020 or 2021. We started 2020, probably the end of late 2020 and then end of 2021, full rollout, full year rollout 2022 and 3 and 4. And you can see the shrink numbers there. They really speak for themselves. And this is just our showrooms. So this is not our DCs yet. We have over 6 million square feet of cubic feet of distribution center space that we have not rolled out RFID yet, but we plan to. And we think it's going to have a very good impact there as well. But again, massive time savings, extremely tightened up our availability and our accuracy, reduced our shrink. And again, we a lot of our product people cash and carry. They take out with them. We call it a take. And a lot of people go to the website to see what they can go see in the store. So it's important that we have an accurate inventory at our retail locations.
I can say,
And by the way, this was definitely not just a tech project. In fact, the person that really runs it now, I would say, is actually in our fraud department and accounting, finance. They maintain it. She's a bulldog. She goes to our stores every week and actually audits the process and checks in with people. And so it's actually, tech has very, very little to do with this anymore, other than when there's a technical problem. And it's really maintained and run by our finance team.
I can definitely agree with that. I've met this individual, and I think that that accountability is extremely important. In some of the visits that I've done to city showrooms, we've even checked online to see, how much this online match up to what's in stores, and it's extremely accurate. I had anecdotally a few years ago, I was buying a gift for my significant other, went to a different retailer, for purchasing something for Valentine's Day, and trust me, you look online, you see, all right, I've got 4 or 5 stores near me. I'm looking for this specific product, and you can tell by the end of those 4 or 5 pit stops that I went to, I had no success in finding it. And I think a technology like RFID, if more and more retailers adopt it, you're going to be able to assist in that process, really improve that process of your customer journeys, not running around to a store to find a product, but walking in with confidence, knowing that what they're looking for online is actually going to be there. And I think, I'm sure City can attest to this too, but it's a huge benefit for this whole buy online, pick up in store, browse online and pick up in store that, a lot of us are doing today as part of our digital journey.
Yep, sure.
Great. Yeah. So this is Pete Heinrich from Zebra. Just want to cover some use cases that we're seeing across retail. As Chad mentioned, the cycle counting of individual items or cases, you can do it any time that fits your schedule. It doesn't have to be once a month, once a quarter, once a year. You track the case at the pallet level tracking, whether it's inbound to the DC or a zone change within a facility. Loss prevention, right? Is it leaving the store? Is it going out the back door? Or even at a DC, is it going out the employee exit? So you're able to track those events. Self-checkout, whether it's on the counter type RFID readers or under the counter, you just place the items on the counter or the basket. You can also do like a checkout and go process if that's what you'd like to do. And then smart displays. You carry something that's tagged up to a display and it'll give you more information on that item. It might work very well for Chad and City Furniture, so you get more details on the item you're holding. And then shipment verification, inbound to a DC, outbound from the DC, inbound to the store. You know exactly what's going through your supply chain. Next slide, Darchit. Some of the best practices we're seeing across retail and other industries is label selection. Chad mentioned it, right? you should look at many different types of labels because there's different sizes, antenna types, chip performance, material, paper, plastic, hard tag, depending on what is going on. Start small and then look at things to scale through, right? As your project grows. Definitely test in-house the tags that you think you want to use on the products you want to use. Don't just trust what you're hearing. I would definitely go to GS1 and look at some of their tag testing on different types of products. If you can source tag, meaning put a tag on at manufacturing, that would be preferable, but somewhere along the process, you have to decide where you're going to apply the tag and where. Chad mentioned developing comprehensive plans, right, on how to run the RFID program, how to train the users that'll be involved, and then collaborate with consultants, other groups, maybe in your peers or your partners in the industry, so that you're getting best practices, for others that have already done this. And then ensure that you're able to scale. So you start small in an area, make certain that you're able to have the right tags on the right products as you grow and expand. That'll give you success throughout your journey. And then again, have clear and understandable standard operating procedures for maintaining that RFID ecosystem, whether it's a tag, the printer, the reader, a fixed reader, a handheld computer that attaches with, and the accessories, the chargers and the cables. You need to make certain you have a way to kind of keep track of all that and what needs to be replaced when. And then perform audits, your KPIs. How are we doing? How are we doing with loss prevention and inventory prior to RFID? And then now how are we doing after? I think there was some great examples that Chad put up, what worked for his organization. Next slide. So some of the tagging labeling strategy. What is it you're going to track? Is it water? Is it metal? Is it frozen? What type of environments does it go through? What's the impact of RF or RFID on the material? Like we mentioned, there's tags that can be put on metal. They have foam backing to give better readability and read range. How far away do you want to read? You want to read within 2 feet? Or do you want to read within 60 feet? There's technologies that we have that can achieve all those read ranges and isolation of products at dock doors, etc. And then how are you going to attach that label to what you're going to track, right? Is it applied at manufacturing, like I said, or inbound to a DC or store, or is it print and apply? The other thing is, what's the environment that the product and the tag will go through in its life cycle, its journey through supply chain? Is it wet? Is it very hot or cold? Is it outside, inside? That type of thing you should really consider. And then where and when do you attach the tag? In this example here, you see a pallet. You have a very durable label that's attached to a plastic pallet. Or even down to an item level. The one on the right is a ring. There's flag tags that can be used, to keep track of small items like a ring, something like that. So these are a lot of things to consider, but just do your homework up front. It'll really pay off in the benefit of the RFID program that you put in place.
Thanks for your insights, Pete. One of the things that we've seen is the RFID label is going to be your reoccurring process whenever it comes to RFID. So having this process or this part of your project done correctly is extremely important, because if you don't have the correct RFID label, it doesn't matter how good your RFID hardware or software or processes are, you're not going to be able to scan it efficiently and effectively. So that labeling, process is something that most of our customers, that's usually the first step that they start in. Oftentimes when it comes to an RFID project as well, this is the first activity that most individuals also start, and most organizations start, because to really take advantage of RFID, it takes time to start labeling your existing products and to allow that to flush through your supply chain. So what most folks, put their most effort on early stage of our project is, going through asking some of these questions, creating that strategy, and also making sure, that you audit that strategy as well. Because for any organization, if you're new to the technology, There might be issues whether yourself or by your suppliers, right? So if you're asking your suppliers to do it, having the ability to go ahead and have a quick and easy way to verify that is also important. Just because essentially at the end of the day, right, it all comes back to data. And if the data is incorrect or the labeling is incorrect, then whatever you're trying to collect in the future is not going to be accurate. So it's a very important step. And thanks, Pete, for sharing your inputs and your insight with decades of experience of of leveraging this technology. With that, I'm going to spend a few moments and just introduce a little bit about some of our solutions that we offer into the marketplace. We have a platform called Tagmatics, and we've got several solutions out there that can be used by retailers and retail partners to help enable their RFID programs. I promise you, I'm going to keep this as painless as possible. I'm not going to bore you to death by reading features, but it's still talk about a little bit about where people might want to use some solutions like this, right? And when we're looking at the ecosystem of retail, what we've tried to do is we've tried to create some off-the-shelf solutions for different parts of any project. So one of our solutions that, for example, City Furniture is leveraging is Tagmatics Retail. This is a solution that allows retailers to count and manage their inventory, whether that be in stores, as well as we do have an expanded modules for being able to keep track of products throughout the supply chain, whether that be, distribution center, warehouses, but basically an off-the-shelf solution for that. But then we also do have some other solutions that can be used as part of the journey for retailer and retail partners. One of the solutions, as it's pretty obvious what it does, is Tagmatics PM Print Manager allows you to print out RFID labels. So for some of the operations, if you've got suppliers that need to print out labels for you, if you've got parts of your supply chain that need to print out RFID labels, being able to have an easy and quick solution to do that. Because what we've seen, right, the folks who are putting these RFID labels on, they're not technical people, right? Their job is not to know how to load up an RFID printer and what the steps need to be. They need an easy way just to be able to go ahead, print those labels out, and make sure that it's error proof, right? Because again, anytime you have issues with the labeling strategy, anything else that follows is probably going to be problematic. So just going through that process and then also making sure that you have the proper serialization. If you understand how RFID works, every single RFID label by standard is unique, right? So if you have duplicates, it reduces the ability for you to leverage the technology. So just another easy solution for that. And on the left-hand side, we've got a great low-cost solution called Tagmatics Wedge. It's being used by a lot of retail partners. So with the growth of retail, there's a lot of folks in the retail industry that have either suppliers or partners that are assisting them with RFID, whether that being in the tagging process, so like a manufacturer that's pre-labeling RFID before it hits the retailer, or even a supply chain partner like a 3PL or a distributor. So we've got some great solutions for folks who want to have a low cost way to inventory those products, verify the contents on those RFID tags are correct, and just have a quick snapshot of what they're sending out to their customers and to their partners and have a written record of that. So that way, in the case if there's any issues, you know exactly what out the door. So we've got several different kind of parts and pieces of the solution. I'm going to walk through just a few pieces that the solution offers just to help educate you on what all is out there. Some of the things, right, and this is pretty obvious when we're looking at any sort of solution, there's going to be a couple of steps that are along the way. One of the things that we'll see is that when it comes to RFID tags, right, you want an easy way to bring that RFID tag association into your organization. So retailers take several different strategies, and we've got options for that across the board, whether that be importing in data from other systems, having a process where you can print RFID labels in-house, or even having the ability to use pre-printed, pre-encoded labels that you commission as product is coming through your door. So kind of having all the options available with that. When you have these RFID devices, having a wide variety of ways to collect that data, whether that be using handhelds in stores to cycle count or in warehouses to cycle count, using fixed RFID readers throughout your process. And some places where retailers like to use fixed RFID readers, some really good examples include being able to do them at front to back of store. So most retailers have a little bit of warehousing space in the back of every store where they store products before they move it to the front of their stores. So many retailers are leveraging fixed RFID readers to kind of track as inventory is moving. Many retailers are also using fixed RFID readers in key areas inside their stores for tracking real-time movements, whether that be in key product movement areas, at checkout areas, fitting room areas, or even at exit and entryways for loss prevention, replacing traditional technologies like EAS because you already have an RFID label on it. Why go through the process of putting another technology for that? And then once you collect the data, it's as easy as that. It's about visualizing it. So we've got a lot of great tools to visualize that data, analyze that data, take it to other systems, report on that, and basically be able to leverage, the data that you're using for other business functionalities. The value that you also have, being an enterprise solution is to be able to roll it out across multiple geographies. So super extensive for configurabilities and ideally, right, just basically have a plug and play solution for being able to start using RFID with your existing other ecosystems. So again, what a lot of folks, are having the vision to do, this is one thing that I like to kind of share is a lot of retailers, have this vision that I want to start and I want to have like real-time visibility with RFID. And this is kind of the goal that a lot of folks want to get towards. And this is something that we're starting to see more and more common. The retailer journey traditionally starts with using handhelds to cycle count, but now we're starting to see the need and the desire to have like a dashboard where you can kind of see in real time where inventory is in a given storeroom or a showroom. And that's one of the things you can start leveraging. Zebra's got some great products for that as well, like their ATR 7000. You can stick it overhead. We're starting to see more and more demand. So, it's a journey. That's one thing that I like to say. And as a solution provider, we've got the tools to be able to analyze that data, to be able to visualize that data if you are willing to move towards that journey. And one thing that I like to point out, right, as part of that journey is you could start with handhelds. Most retailers today start with handhelds, and they're starting to progress towards more automated technologies like fixed RFID readers, overhead readers, stationary readers at key points in their facilities or even at their distribution centers. We've got a great customer, just to make really anecdotal examples. One of our customers does a lot of direct to consumer orders from their distribution center. So one of the things that they're doing is that they're using RFID tables like how you see in this image on the left-hand side over here to verify the orders. And this is not only direct to consumers, but also to stores. Stores might be reordering a mixture of goods. You might have a pick list that has 10, 15 different items on it. It's going directly to a consumer, going directly to a store. How do you verify that it's accurate? Most retailers in today's distribution center model might barcode scan it. Now with RFID, you have a label on there. You might be able to just put it on top of a station, verify what's supposed to be on there. So what we're starting to see more, and this is kind of a trend that's there in the industry too, that obviously our solution support is you can start leveraging the technology further up in your supply chain, right? To automate some traditionally manual processes in warehouses and distribution centers, even at the point of manufacturing now, where many folks who are supplying to a lot of the retailers today are starting to leverage the technology in their manufacturing processes just to really take advantage of what they're, the automation that the technology provides. Another important thing that's obviously that's very critical to any project is the ability to integrate this data. I'm a big believer, RFID does nothing for you that another technology can't. It just does it a lot more cost effectively. It does it a lot more. It does it a lot more quickly and accurately, right? Chad mentioned at the beginning that his team was counting. That counting process that was being done was very manual, very error prone. And obviously, if you use technologies like barcode or even manually scanning, you can achieve accuracy, but it's very expensive. RFID just does it a lot better. So one of the important things and a critical thing in today's world is when you're collecting that data, taking it to other business systems, and that's extremely important for retailers. So we like to provide a lot of options for you to be able to connect it to other systems, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of buzzwords going around. People throwing out concepts like, "Hey, I want to use AI in my operations," or I want to provide machine learning so I can do better ordering or better customer management. But one of the things that folks don't understand is that how do you get there, right? One of the most important things is data. And RFID is a driver of that data, right? So if we take this data, bring it into our AI models, into our ML models, we can actually be able to leverage it for a lot more good. And that's one thing that I want to leave with a lot of the folks here today is that RFID is an enabler of a lot of the technologies that some of your organizations might be asking you to go and explore, right? Your leadership might be saying, "Hey, how can we use these cutting edge technologies?" And an easy answer to that is, we can start leveraging RFID so we can start collecting this data and be able to use it for other purposes. So that's something that I want to also point out, important for a lot of retailers in today's world. So, one thing that I want to leave off in terms of just the general theme of today's webinar before we open it up for questions is, why and how is RFID for all retailers, right? And this is an important factor because some of you may be aware, but Walmart is asking many of their suppliers, it's almost everything that's not food or beverage to put an RFID label on it. Now, Walmart's fortune number one. Some of you folks, may not be at that level, right? You may be a smaller retailer, maybe a couple locations. But why should you go out and adopt a technology like this, right? And what I like to say is it really helps in a couple of factors, right? In today's world, labor is expensive. You can go look at the reports. Costco's got minimum wage at $30 an hour, right? If you're spending that much time and effort counting and managing your inventory, it makes it very expensive. In addition to that, even some of the things that you can see, as you saw even with City's example, is it can help with a lot of things like inventory visibility, reducing your shrink. It's surprising how many things just walk out the door without your knowledge. But if you're counting more often, you can have kind of a magnifying glass on some of those problems, so you can do corrective action. And in the end, what all of us care about, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it doesn't matter what business you're running. RFID, it just helps smoothen the customer experience, right? At the end of the day, it's a tool for that operation. So if we're able to improve the experience for the customer by making it easier for them to make their purchase or make it easier for them to find what they're looking for, that's what we care about, right? And it's an enabler in that, just basically a frictionless experience. So even if you're a small retailer, if you're able to provide this value and RFID can help provide that value, it's going to make a great ROI for you, as you just saw, as an example, what City was able to achieve in just a few short years. With that, I'll see if my friends, Chad or Pete, have anything else to add on. Really appreciate everyone joining over here today. We're going to go ahead and open up the floor for questions. If anyone else doesn't have anything else to add on, Chad or Pete, we'll wait for a few seconds for some questions to roll in.
Well, we already have one that was waiting midway through the presentation, and they are asking, what encoding scheme are you using?
I would say ours is somewhat custom. Archit, you can confirm that, but we have to relabel everything that we get. Unlike some other retailers that have standard UPC codes that are applicable across the industry, every piece that we get, we have to open up and essentially relabel. There's just, for most furniture is not like a TV or a refrigerator. It's not a standard SKU that is, or a model number. Every piece is pretty much unique. So we end up relabeling everything, and we have a unique encoding scheme that is specific to us based on what DC it is received in, and then what store it's going to. So there's some unique logic in there that we use.
Yep, that's correct. And what we're seeing today, and it's a great question, right? That it really depends on the business. There are some off-the-shelf encoding standards that are out there, including from GS1. A very commonly used standard in the retail space is the SG10. It's a great standard to avoid situations where you have duplicates, and it also helps you with basically having a level playing field. So that way you can ensure that you're not running into situations where one store versus another is, having differences in how to do it. That's an important role that software plays, but we are seeing that, it really comes down to your use case. The standards are out there to simplify it. But again, that's a question that's going to be early on in your project to see, can you adhere to some of the standards that are out there in the industry, or do you need something that's maybe a little more custom to you because you may not be following a traditional flow of where retailers are, going through. And it's what we're seeing is, it kind of delves into two different directions. Of course, there's benefits and pros and cons to both. And what we would recommend is, if you don't know, feel free to have a conversation with an organization like ourselves, and we'd be happy to walk you through the pros and cons.
And this question got brought up when you were talking about reducing labor, and the question was, how does RFID reduce labor costs, or does it just shift labor, or does it actually reduce labor?
Archie, I could take some of that too with
Sure.
Chad. The RFID readers are set up to read thousands of tags a second. So as long as the tag is visible, We're picking that up, right? So you're not having to touch every single item with a barcode read or physical inventory. So I don't know, Chad, if you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say it depends on your environment. For us, um, because we do a count every week now versus a count every quarter or once or twice a year, there's certainly more labor involved. However, we didn't add people to do it. We're using labor we already had. So we have a huge sales force, 1,000 associates or so. So we're using the sales force, it's already there. And they're scanning the store in the morning when typically Sunday. We started on Sunday and Monday is when we do the counts. And we're using the staff that we have. Now, do we pay some overtime here and there? Possibly. And we want to have work-life balance for our team. But we didn't hire anybody to do our RFIDs, so it didn't cost us more from a labor perspective. And the benefits of having accurate inventory, $1 million plus less of shrink, far exceeds the weekly scans or the biweekly scans, and frankly, it just forces us to run a better business by knowing how much inventory we have and making sure everybody's following their standards to keep our inventory counts correct. Because again,
And
it's not just the count, it's the movement of the product between the stores, it's the releasing of the merchandise, it's the receiving of it. There's so many parts that go into inventory getting in and out of the store. And by having those weekly cycle counts, it really puts a light on, are those processes being followed correctly? That you probably may or may not recognize, definitely not as quick if you weren't counting your inventory every week.
we just have a quick question about security and whether you have to prevent unauthorized access to your RFID data, or how do you protect the security data integrity?
Yeah, we essentially lock down our systems between us and the RFID server that we're uploading the data to when we're doing the counts. And then it goes from there to our secure data warehouse. So we haven't had any concerns with security, and but we treat it as if it's any other external party, and we do our due diligence with any vendor we work with, including RFID for you.
And to add on to that, one of the best practices that City is obviously following, that most retailers should be following today, is to lock their RFID tags. That's an important process, because with RFID you have the physical printed content, but then you also have the electronic chip that's on the inside that has a value, right? It's a unique value. So just like with other retailers, City is following, obviously following the best practices to lock that EPC value, to make sure that chip value cannot be, tampered with. And there's a lot of best practices that are out there when it comes to like data integrity that you need to follow when it comes to not only security but also the integrity of the data. So like the serialization of your RFID tag chips and making sure that you're not running into duplicates. So they are following those best practices as well.
What are some of the first steps that a retailer should do to get started with RFID?
I would say have executive buy-in for the program. Do a proof of concept and do an on-site proof of concept, and really understand your environment and make sure you have the right hardware to accomplish what you're trying to do.
Great insight. And I would just like to add,
Hardware being labels, scanner, printer. Those are the key ingredients to being successful there. And then all of the, having the support, the executive support, because it's really it's a business change. It's not a technical change. It's not an accounting change. At least at the scale that we rolled it out. Again, 38 showrooms, 15,000 SKUs per showroom, account every week. You have to have buy-in at all levels to transform your business in that way.
and one more thing that I'll just add in, great points, Chad, is to When you're looking at, the process like RFID, it's really easy to talk about it. We're talking about it here right now. We're making it sound great. I'm sure everyone's loving it, but it's really important, as Chad mentioned, to really test it out in your environment, because there's a lot of questions that are going to come up, and you can't answer those questions until you get into the weeds, get your hands dirty and really understand how things are operating, because that's going to help you understand what's working, what's not working, and how it works for you as an organization. Because every company is different, right? So, don't take our word for it. Try it out, right? Go through, test it out, do it in a small pilot, small proof of concept. Make sure that you're content with it. Take as long as you need, because, if you don't take those critical steps and verify it, you don't want it to come back and cause headaches in the future. So we always recommend, a crawl, walk, run approach, and that's going to make your project successful as well.
And we have a question about how do you print and encode the tags, and what equipment do you need for that?
So we use the Tagmatics software in our showrooms to print the tags, and we have an API integration with their system where we upload all of our SKUs and the pricing file, and then the Zebra printer ensures that the tag is printed and encoded. And there's definitely some learnings there to make sure that your encoding is correct and it's what you're expecting, and that things are getting encoded correctly. We definitely went through some lessons learned there where you need to make sure you're error proofing your processes to ensure things are getting encoded the way that you expect them to. Because if you're printing a bunch of tags and they're not what you expect, it can be very hard to find them and to fix that problem. So that would be definitely a lesson learned to everybody, is make sure you have a good process around your printing before you start printing massive amounts of tags and deploying them to the wild, because it can be somewhat challenging to fix that problem if you don't catch it up front.
And a quick plug on that, that's exactly what Tagmatics Wedge is. So it's a free download from the App Store. You can use it for free, 500 scans at no cost. And you can give it a try for any of you guys who have similar workflows, right? It's very important to verify on that, and definitely appreciate the insight, Chad.
Yeah. I didn't even know what Wedge did, but.
And then I guess a follow-up to them is, and then they're asking, how do they apply the RFID labels to their products?
Yeah, for us, it's done at the point of receiving the product from into the showroom. So you really want to have like a demarcation point of nothing goes past this point without it being tagged. And we have an entry point to our showrooms, to the floor from the warehouse. And everything gets tagged before it goes onto the showroom floor. That's sort of the standard. It doesn't go past that point unless it gets tagged. And then we have a whole tagging guidebook, style book of, depending on what type of product it is. If it's TV, it gets tagged in the bottom left section. Because again, when you're doing an audit, and we do audits every week, people are walking around looking to see, are things tagged in the right place? Because if you have discrepancies and then you want to try to find if something is not tagged or tagged wrong, and you know where it should be, it makes it much easier to audit something. So we have a point of demarcation that everything must get tagged before it goes across that point. We haven't to make that even better. You could have a portal or something that would flag or indicate if something went through that point without a tag, or like a screen that would show you the product and the tag, so you could visually confirm it as it was coming through. That was something we were experimenting with. We just didn't roll that out as another layer of error proofing your process. But that's something we'll probably pick up at some point. But
Great. And appreciate a couple people just put in a little bit of personal questions with their email, so we can follow up with you individually if you have something that more specific that you want to talk about. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
All right. Lastly, we have the big question: how long does it typically take to see an ROI after implementing RFID?
I think that's going to be unique for every company. I know people don't want to hear that, but it depends. How big was your shrink? How much time were you spending doing 2D scans? Were you doing 2D scans? How inaccurate or accurate was your inventory currently? I think there's a lot of questions there that only people asking that question would be able to answer. But for us, I mean, it was within a year for us. It was within a year.
Okay, the follow-up to that was what was your initial investment and label cost?
Yeah, label initial investment was really it's three things really. It's the scanners, the printers, and the labels. Most people already have Wi-Fi, and you know, we already had the humans, so we didn't need to hire anybody. And the software cost, I would say, is somewhat negligible. I mean, it's not there is a recurring cost for the Tagmatic software. It's SaaS. It's a SaaS service. But the real capital expenditure was the upfront cost on the Zebra printers, the scanners. But if you look at it at a showroom level, you know, as a cost per showroom, as a percentage of our total cost, it's really negligible in terms of the amount of shrink that it reduced.
Good. All right, last chance for any further questions. Well, thank you, everybody. Great questions. And thank you definitely to our panelists who provided your expertise. Like as I mentioned, we will be sending out a link to this that you can share as well as the presentation download. So look forward to receiving that.
Yeah, and one last tip I would say, tip from wise tip would be have a really good inventory replenishment system for your labels. So you never want to run out of RFID tags. So we have a very robust Kanban system where we reorder and we know our lead times, and we know our run rate, and we ensure we always have labels stocked.
Good tip.
Good tip. Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
All
great
right.
rest of your day.
All right.
Very welcome. Thank you, everybody.